Let's do it.
And thank you all for having the patience to endure all these technical issues during this COVID environment. But I guess the priority is just getting this information out to all our participants. So from the beginning, Arrigo, we're at the first slide if you wish to begin.
Thank you, George. And yeah, thank you everyone for your patience. I know this technical difficulties, so hopefully we'll get through this now. Let's dive right in. I know you want to get this information. Again, my name is Rigo Reyes. I'm with the Office of Immigrant Affairs in the County of Los Angeles. And today we have an outstanding panel to share with you some of the resources the county has, including recommendations to keep our essential workers safe and get them the help they need to get themselves and their families through this pandemic. I'm going to turn the mic over to our Chief in our Office of Immigrant Affairs to share with us some of the concerns that our workers have in regard to impact on their immigration status that sadly drive them away from seeking the help they so much need. Dan, let me turn the mic back to you, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Rigo. And Jorge, if you can move forward 2 slides, please. One more. And one more. If we can get to the first public charge slide. Thank you. Okay, so public charge is a long-standing rule in U.S. immigration law that impacts some immigrants and their eligibility to come to the U.S. or qualify for permanent residence if they're likely to receive public benefits in the future. And before the rule went into effect, public health advocates nationwide warned that this rule was a terrible idea for, among other reasons, that if we found ourselves in a national health crisis, it could keep people from accessing the resources that they need. The rule went into effect in late February, just as the virus was beginning to spread in communities nationwide. In reality, many immigrants are simply not impacted by the public charge rule change at all, and many important benefits for immigrant workers are not factored into the public charge test. So the rule only applies when immigrants seek to enter the U.S. on a visa or enter for the first time as a permanent resident, that is, to get a green card. So many people already living here, it also impacts people already living in the US in their application process to become a legal permanent resident or extend a visa. But not all immigrants applying for a green card or permanent residence are subject to this public charge test. So it does not apply to humanitarian immigration relief applications like asylum, the U visa, VAWA for victims of violent crime and domestic violence. It does not apply to those who already have a green card, who are seeking to renew that green card, or who are applying for citizenship. It just doesn't, the new rule does not apply to them. It only applies to legal permanent residents if they leave the country for 180 days or longer and seek to return to the US. And then if we can move forward to the next slide, I really want to emphasize that the rule only applies to certain forms of public assistance. So there are specific benefit programs, primarily federally funded programs, that are factored into this public charge test. So an immigrant who receives them could have consequences for receiving those benefits. But in reality, almost immigrants subject to this public charge test simply do not qualify for those benefits anyway. That includes programs like general relief, supplemental security income or SSI, food stamps, which we know in California as the CalFresh program, federal housing assistance. These are programs that almost all immigrants subject to the public charge test simply don't qualify for anyway. Now, there are some legal permanent residents who qualify for these programs. But as I mentioned, people who have green cards are not subject to the public charge test unless they leave the country for more than 180 days and seek to re-enter, or have certain criminal history and seek to re-enter the US from abroad. The real big important takeaways that I want to mention here are not only that most of the immigrants subject to the public charge rule are not eligible for these benefits, but they may have household members who are. They may have U.S. citizen children who do qualify for food stamps, for CalFresh. And this public charge rule does not factor into an immigrant's public charge consideration benefits received by their household members, including their U.S. citizen children. Those benefits, receipt of those benefits, is excluded from consideration in the public charge test. If we can move to the next slide. So for purposes of today's presentation, and the rest of today's presentation, I really want to emphasize that a lot of the most critical benefits that immigrant workers need at this moment are not factored into the test. This includes any COVID-related testing, treatment, and when we eventually have preventative care services. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has clarified it will not factor in COVID-related testing or treatment into the public charge test. And then our state and locally funded health programs, Medi-Cal in California for people who are undocumented, for DACA beneficiaries. California makes Medi-Cal available to all Californians up to age 26. If you have DACA, if you are undocumented, the state is paying for your Medi-Cal if you receive it. And that is not factored into the public charge test. The My Health LA program for uninsured Angelenos, uninsured individuals in LA County who are below a certain income, they can qualify for a healthcare program known as My Health LA. It's funded by the county and it is not factored into the public charge test. And then before I pass it along, the important employment-related benefits, unemployment insurance, disability, paid family leave, and workers' comp are all considered earned benefits. The immigrants who qualify for those benefits are not punished in a future public charge test for receiving those benefits. They are not factored into the test. Now, not all immigrants qualify for unemployment insurance. A person must have some form of lawful status. A DACA holder who has a work permit, for example, may be eligible for unemployment insurance. Someone who is completely undocumented will not. But receiving unemployment or disability and paid family leave that are available to Californians regardless of immigration status does not count against an immigrant in a future application process for a green card, where they may be subject to the public charge test. And then emergency benefits. If a person needs to go into medical sheltering, receive emergency food, or receive one-time emergency assistance, this is not factored into an immigrant's public charge test. And just to reiterate, benefits received by household members like U.S. citizen children, also not factored in. With that, I'm going to wrap up my remarks and pass it along.
Yes, and our next speaker is Dr. Gunzenhauser. Dr. Gunzenhauser, I will queue up your slides.
George, when you put those slides up, I just wanted to mention how sad it really is when we hear about a mom who chooses not to take her baby to her doctor's appointment out of fear that doing so will impact her immigration status. We want to remind our immigrant workers, families, and all immigrants that before they take such action, they should call us, our Office of Immigrant Affairs, and go over the potential ramifications so that you make informed decisions. And as you said, George, our next speaker, Dr. Jeff Gunzenhauser, is going to share with us some very practical measures that we can take to keep ourselves and families, workplace safe. Jeff, it's been such a pleasure working with you over the years. Please, the floor is all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Rigo. Pleasure's shared. I enjoy working with you before, and I'm glad to be here for this presentation today. Why don't we go ahead to the next slide? I do have a number of slides. I just want to highlight the key points so we can keep on time here. I'm just going to provide some initial information to make sure everybody understands the situation with COVID here in the county, and then quickly move on to the practices we have in place to ensure safe workplaces. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see, I just want to highlight that I think everybody knows the numbers, but we did hit a high point here in LA County this week. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see we are now over 300,000 cases and have had more than 7,000 deaths as of these data are from a couple of days ago, so they're a little bit higher. So you've all heard that throughout the nation and elsewhere in the world, cases seem to be surging. So the challenge is to contain this in our communities and in our work sites is really growing. But I do want to say, while it is currently a nightmare, if we do follow the practices that are outlined, we can keep people safe, including our workplaces. Please go to the next slide. I do just want to highlight a few things. Many of you may know that the state has a tiered system called a framework for a safer economy, and each county is assigned to one of the purple tiers here based on the 3 criteria here on the left. I'm not going to go into these in detail, but if we go to the next slide, I will just highlight here in LA County, we are in purple, the widespread transmission, the most restrictive tier. And that's because out of the 3 criteria, the first one, which is our number of cases, is still at a high level. It has to get under 7 per 100,000 in order for us to move into the second tier, or the red tier. This is important because this would allow us to open up additional workplaces. We were originally down around 7. As you can see, as of last week, this was at 7.6. It actually went up to 8.0 yesterday. So we have a little bit of work to contain the virus and drive this back down to where we can open additional work sites. Go to the next slide. I just want to highlight some things that have happened here in the county. This chart shows the number of daily deaths from COVID over a period of a few months. You can see this was back in August on the left side when we were having well over 40 persons a day perishing from COVID, but you can see more recently the numbers have dropped well under 20. So I think we are making great headway in terms of treating people more effectively and saving lives. Let's go to the next slide. I do want to highlight, though, that the hospitalization rate stabilized here, but you can see right about in the middle here around Labor Day, which was September 10th, it started to level off. And in fact, recently the hospitalizations have started to trend up. So we have to do more work to protect ourselves and to preserve life and hospitalizations here in the county. Let's go to the next slide, please. I do want to point out that there are certain communities, particularly communities of color, that are much more highly affected by this virus in every way that we look at it. Here you can see the yellow line represents folks that are Hispanic, and you can see individuals who are Latino X are either have the highest hospitalization rates, and then for the green line, African Americans in LA County are next. So this represents that our communities of color who are doing the essential work in workplaces are really the ones most at risk of infection and the serious outcomes that can happen. So we have to protect ourselves. Next slide, please. So let me talk a little bit about our overall strategy. There really are 4 things that we focus on. First is what we call containment. That's the traditional work of public health. We find a case, isolate it, find their contacts, quarantine them, test people, etc. But this is only a small part of what is going on. Most cases are not recognized. So we're asking all individuals to comply with the things you've heard. Remain home if you don't have to go out, wear face coverings, etc. And then there's the compliance for organizations. And this is what we're talking about today. Work sites, what are the rules and how do we work together to ensure these are being implemented so that we can work safely? And then, of course, there's public messaging. You can see there's a lot of confusion and not complete agreement about the strategies. And so we're doing all we can to provide accurate information and to ask people to comply with the things that we know that work. Next slide. I do want to highlight, if you go to our website, publichealth.lacounty.gov, and go to the information for employers and employees, there's a wealth of information. This is just one example. This is a fact sheet that highlights the protections that are available to the employees and are mentioned by the other panelists, what to do if you have to return to work, benefits are available, and there's a specific statement there that threats about immigration to employees are frankly illegal, and what to do about that. So there's many fact sheets there, and I recommend you do take a look at it. Please go to the next slide. I do want to say that in general, there are 5 things that we ask all work sites to do. First, they have to have practices to protect employee health. You can see the things that are listed here, like staying home if you're sick. Then there's got to be things, and you should be seeing these things to encourage physical distancing, you know, limiting the number of people and markers, etc. Then there's measures to infection control. We're talking about ventilation and other things. And then there should be active communication. There should be signs. Employees should be receiving a copy of the protocols that their employers have signed off on. And then, of course, we want to enhance access to critical services, and special things are needed. Let's go to the next slide. I do want to highlight that we do have a program called our Compliance Certificate Program, where we encourage all employers to take an online training through which they learn the basics of the 5 areas that I highlighted. They document that they've been trained, and they can post this for certificate. We've had thousands of people complete this already, and we're encouraging everyone to do it. Also, this is also available to every employee to complete as well. Again, you can go to our website. Can learn a wealth of information. Next slide, please. I also want to highlight that there are a number of things that we are doing. One of these is a program that our Board of Supervisors has requested, which is called the Public Health Councils Program. This is, you know, we're still discussing how to implement this with the board as we're getting input from employers and employees about how to do this. But the idea is that an organization should have a set of workers who've been trained and are informed about the practices that need to be in place. They look for that in their work site, and then they have a variety of ways to reach out for additional education, or if there are frankly violations, how to get those resolved. So stay in tune for that program as that is going to be rolled out. Of course, we do have environmental health technicians, and when we hear about a complaint or routine inspections, we go out and literally are doing thousands of inspections every week, helping work sites to come into compliance. And when there's an outbreak, we do an investigation as noted there. Let's go to the next slide. I will assure you that in general, when we do look at compliance and work sites, as shown on this slide, there's a lot of different work sites on the left. But in general, for most of the things that we do ask employers to do, they are in compliance with the major things we're asking. So this shows we can move ahead with having safe work sites, but not everybody's complying. Next slide. This is just a list, for example, of some of the places that we've actually had to cite, and we've actually had to close some facilities. So I do want to assure people that as your health department, we are very active to making sure that people are complying with what's being asked, and workers helping us to identify and solve these issues is a key cornerstone in all of our efforts. Let's go to the next slide, just a few more, and then I'll be done. Here's a couple other things for folks who, let's say you have a case, that you're a case or a family member's a case, and there's no way for that family member to stay at home. We actually have some isolation and quarantine sites around the county where people can stay temporarily for the period of their isolation. We also have some other resources that are available here, such as a community fund and child care vouchers. And we'd be glad to provide more information on that, but these are key resources to keep people at work. Let's go to the next slide. And I just want to highlight that we're doing an awful lot in public education campaigns to make sure highly impacted communities are informed. And we have brought on a lot of community health workers who should be reaching out into your communities to provide more information about all of these services. So I think that's it. Let's go to the next slide. I think I'm finished, and I would be glad to, here's some challenges. I just do want to highlight this. The real challenge is to make sure everyone, employers and employees, are alike aware of our protocols that I've mentioned, that people take ownership, that we all practice safe behaviors in our personal lives, and that all workers are aware of the services that are being discussed today. And as vaccines and treatments become more available, we're going to work with you and everyone to make sure these are targeted towards the individuals that need them most. That concludes my presentation, and glad to be here and take questions later in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Your information and the clarity, the reassurance that you have been so consistently providing us throughout this pandemic has been incredible, and your team is just an incredible job at making sure that we understand what's going on. And certainly, like you mentioned, very practical measures that we can take to reduce the risk in the situation where we get infected, where to go to find some resources. We really appreciate you, the team, and the department at large for what you do. So now we will transition to something that is very crucial for workers. Not only are we losing our jobs, sometimes even worse, that when we don't get paid for the work we do. Our Department of Consumer and Business Affairs has a program to help with that. And for that today, we have Perla, one of the investigators, who is going to give us a broad, high-level overview of what the program is, how workers can reach us, and what they can expect from us. Perla, if you can just summarize all the incredible work you do day in, day out, so that we let our communities know that there is help and their immigration status in regard to getting paid for the wages that they have earned is not an issue. Perla?
Thank you, Rigo. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. My name is Perla Molina. I'm a wage enforcement investigator with the County of Los Angeles Wage Enforcement Program, Department of Consumer Affairs. If we can go to the next slide. Today, I'm going to be discussing the County of Los Angeles minimum wage ordinance and our department's role and how we enforce that ordinance. A few acronyms really quickly. DCBA, that stands for our department, Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. MWO is minimum wage ordinance. The following MWEO is minimum wage enforcement ordinance, and WEP stands for wage enforcement program. Next slide, please. Okay, so on the Board of Supervisors passed the County of Los Angeles minimum wage ordinance that took effect on July 1st of 2016. Under this ordinance employees who perform at least 2 hours of work in a particular week within the unincorporated areas of the county. And this includes part-time employees, full-time employees, employees that are on probation or training, and employees who are working for nonprofit organizations as well, and anyone who is entitled to the minimum wage under the California minimum wage law. I just really highlight that our department and the ordinance does not have any restrictions as far as employees when it pertains to their legal status. So that is not something that we ask for as investigators when we go out to businesses and we interview these employees. We're not looking to see what your legal status is because it does not matter for our ordinance. It applies to all workers, regardless of their legal status. It is not something that we will ever ask, and we want to just highlight that employees have workers' rights under the ordinance. Next slide. Okay, so this ordinance created a timeline for minimum wage rates that is higher than the state of California. The timetable has two schedules, one for small businesses, and that's for employers with 25 or fewer employees. And then there's another for large businesses, and that's for employers with 26 or more employees. Now, small businesses are currently, effective July 1st of this year, employees who work for an employer with 25 or fewer employees are entitled to $14.25 an hour. And employers with 26 or more employees are required to pay those employees $15 an hour. That took effect July 1st of 2020. Although we are in, COVID-19 emergency is, a big factor for our communities. We do want to protect the workers, the lowest paid workers in our community. So the schedule for the minimum wage increases was not delayed due to the COVID-19 emergency. Next slide. Beginning January 1st of 2022 and thereafter, the county CEO will determine the adjusted rates based on the Consumer Price Index. And that will take effect July 1st of that year. This will be published in a bulletin announcing the new adjusted rates. So depending on what the CPI index is for the following year on January 1st of 2022, then the county CEO will be publishing that information for the new schedule. Next slide. This is a very important slide. This is something that workers should be looking at in their workplaces if they are working in unincorporated areas of the county. And just briefly, without getting into too much detail, an unincorporated area of the county is considered any region that is not falling within a city's boundary lines. And we are going to go over how to determine if you are performing work in an unincorporated area in a couple of slides. So every employer is required to post in a conspicuous place at any workplace or job site located within unincorporated area of the county a notice informing those employees of their current minimum wage rates and their rights under the minimum wage ordinance. Now, this poster is also required to be posted in English and Spanish, and it must be in a conspicuous place. So it can't be hidden from the employees because it does have a lot of valuable information about their workers' rights. And we do enforce this very strictly because we want to make sure that it is available to workers in English, but also in Spanish. Okay. Next slide, please. So what is the wage enforcement ordinance and what does it provide for workers? There is a anti-retaliation provision in our ordinance that makes it unlawful for any employer or any other person to discriminate in any manner or take adverse action against any person in retaliation of exercising their rights set forth under our ordinance. It is unlawful for the employer to take adverse action against the employees exercising their rights protected under this law. So if an employer is discriminating against a worker because of their legal status, age, sex, it doesn't matter. There is a provision in our ordinance and those workers are protected. So we do encourage workers who feel that they've been discriminated and are performing work in unincorporated areas to reach out to the county. And I am going to be providing the county's contact counseling telephone number in the later slides. Next slide. So in an effort to protect these employees, under our ordinance, employers are required to inform the employees of what their wages are. And this is called an initial compensation disclosure statement. There is a provision in our ordinance that requires employers to give a written statement disclosing the following information to workers. The notice includes the employer's name, the business name, physical and mailing address of the main office, an email address, and the employer's phone number. It also should specify the employee's pay rate and pay days, and if applicable for restaurant workers, or hotel workers, a tip policy if that is set in place. It must include employee pay basis, so whether that employee is being paid hourly, weekly, or on commission. It should also include the formula by which the rate of pay can be determined, and any deductions taken from the employee's paycheck and pay period should be specified as well, and any other additional information that is required by law. Both employers and employees can view this form using the website provided on this slide, and that's through the Department of Industrial Relations. Next slide. So what is another responsibility that an employer must take? In order for us to conduct our investigations, we do have a statute of limitation for 4 years. So as an employer, they are required to keep accurate and complete records pertaining to each employee for a period of 4 years. And for our purposes of monitoring compliance, and the employer is required to allow our department, DCPA, access to those payroll records. They are required to allow us to interview persons, including employees, during normal business hours, and they must cooperate with all DCPA investigations. Next slide. So how can a worker or an employer know if they are working in unincorporated areas? I have included 3 resources that are available through county. One is a website for the register recorder. We have another for the referral address verification system. And the Department of Regional Planning also has a database where you can search your workplace address and get the results that you need to determine whether you are working in an unincorporated area or a city. Okay. Next slide. So how is the department enforcing the minimum wage ordinance? We're doing so by ensuring that employers know their responsibilities under the minimum wage ordinance. We do proactive visits, which are one-on-one counseling sessions with business owners, and we also offer counseling services to employers. So we can answer all of your questions if you are a business owner. You can do so by calling us at our counseling department or visiting our website or submitting any inquiries to our email address that I will be sharing in the last slide. We also ensure that employees know their rights under the minimum wage ordinance. So we do work with community-based organizations to get the word out, to let workers, including immigrant workers, know of their rights and what wages they're entitled to under our ordinance. And we also enforce those applicable laws and regulations by conducting investigations, which are payroll audits. So we can determine if employees are owed any wages and make sure that we see through that they are made whole again. Okay, next slide. Okay, for sake of time, I'm gonna just remind everyone that they can submit their questions in the chat or send us an email. I will be sharing that email address. Okay, next slide. Really quick, I don't want to take too much time, Rigo. I know we're on a time crunch. I just want to mention quickly, there's a couple of slides on coverage that I can go over really quickly, but I just want to also emphasize and let everyone attending today know that there is a step-by-step guide on our website, on our dcba.la County website, showing both business owners and workers a step-by-step guide on how to determine if they are working in unincorporated areas. So using the Register Recorder website, they can select really quickly district map lookup by address. They can punch in the home number and the street name of their workplace. And if you go to the next slide, please. Once they do so, they can click submit. If we go to the next slide. Then their workplace address should be populated. You want to make sure that you do select the correct address to determine jurisdiction. If the address does not populate using the Register Recorder, remember there are other county resources that are available that you can use to determine if you are working in an unincorporated area or a city that does have a minimum wage ordinance. Next slide. An example of the address that was just populated on Montrose. Once you do click on the address of your workplace, you will get a select district listing. You want to make sure that you're always looking at the 6th bullet point from the top to determine if your workplace is considered an unincorporated area. The Montrose address that we used for this example does fall in unincorporated Montrose, so employees performing work at that address are subject to our minimum wage ordinance. Next slide. The address here, as an example, 2230 East 38th Street in LA. This address falls under the city of Vernon. The word unincorporated is not there, and this address falls within a city's jurisdiction, and the city of Vernon does not have a minimum wage ordinance, so our county ordinance does not apply here since it's not unincorporated, and because city of Vernon does not have its own ordinance, the employees are subject to the state minimum wage. The state minimum wage is always the default minimum wage schedule. Next slide. In this example, we have 500 West Temple Street, LA. This address, if an employee was working here, they're working in an address where it falls under the jurisdiction for the city of LA. Now, because the city of LA has their own ordinance, the worker is subject to the city of LA's minimum wage schedule, and the business owner, the employer, is required to follow the provisions set forth by the city of LA's minimum wage ordinance. Next slide. I believe this is the last one. This address is in the city of Valencia. So, you know, as a worker, you punch in your workplace address. If you get something like the city of Santa Clarita, the city of Santa Clarita does not have its own ordinance, so the employer is required to follow the state schedule. And it does get very tricky, and it is hard for workers and business owners to know if these cities have minimum wage ordinances. So it is really important that you know what resources are available to you. I'm here to just, if you can take anything away from this presentation, is to let you know that we as a department are here to help you and answer any questions that you have pertaining to the minimum wage ordinance. And if you skip over to the next question, to the next slide, I apologize. One more. Here is our number. We are available to answer any questions related to minimum wage Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. Our telephone number is 1-800-593-8222, or you can submit any questions to wagehelp@dcba.lacounty.gov. I hope that I was able to answer some questions and provide some clarity. Rigo, I'm so sorry for taking time. I wanted to highlight that you are protected, you do have workers' rights, and if you have any questions, please make sure you give us a call.
Thank you, Perla. Actually, did answer my question about, you mentioned how it can be confusing for anyone finding out what wage applies to them, what city, and so on. So I'm really glad that you clarified that if they call our team, you can walk them through the process and give them the information they need. Thank you so much for all the work you and the team do. I know it's a lot of work, and you're doing terrific results, getting these wages to folks who earn them and are having some challenges doing so. And just a reminder that you provide services in different languages. So please give us a call. You got the number. And Perla, thank you so much for all you do. Now I would like to transfer the mic to our next speaker from our great partners at BetSedec. Kelsey, the work you do there, not only is it crucial, but it is, I think it's the overarching theme here that we need to provide access to resources where workers and their families feel comfortable to come in and get that kind of help. If you don't mind, letting us know about it, a little bit of what BetSedec, is and does, and then certainly these bullet points that you want to cover in regard to the support you provide to our communities. So, proud to have worked with you for so many years, and really here to see what value we can add to the work you do. It's all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Kelsey Chappell. I'm an attorney with BetSedec Legal Services. And I am an attorney with the Employment Rights Project at BetSedec. If we could go to the next slide, please. So BetSedec is a nonprofit legal services organization. We provide civil legal services to residents of LA County, regardless of their race, religion, ethnicity, or immigration status. So we have an open door policy. Please call us with questions on your civil legal services issue, and those services are provided for free. And as it said on the previous slide, I'll be presenting a little bit today on some of the benefits that are available for wage replacement right now, and some paid sick leave laws that are available. But I'll say that there are a lot more out there than I can cover today. So I'll give you some information about our weekly clinic with the Employment Rights Project that workers are welcome to call to get advice about their particular situation. Next slide, please. So just preliminary information, because the laws are changing so rapidly in response to COVID-19, this presentation is up to date today, but may not be next week. And so that's important to note. Also, this presentation isn't legal advice for any particular person's situation. For that, you should give us a call and we'll give you a free legal consult. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of some of the situations people are finding themselves in. The immigrant community is one of the hardest hit. So people are losing their jobs, can't work because they're sick, or can't work because they need to take care of family members that are sick. So I'll be talking about some of the benefits and leave available for those situations. Next slide, please. So the primary benefit available if you lose your job, and many people are right now, is unemployment insurance benefits. And as Daniel mentioned earlier, this unfortunately is not available for undocumented immigrants that do not have work authorization. But for folks that do have work authorization, it's generally available for employees that worked within a 12-month period before their application. It is generally just available for employees and excludes independent contractors and people that are self-employed. But I will say that many workers are misclassified as independent contractors. That is, their employers treat them as independent contractors and pay them that way. But under California law, really, they should be employees and they should be entitled to benefits that employees are entitled to, like unemployment insurance benefits. So if you think that might be your situation, you should consult an attorney. Again, I'll give you that information for giving us a call. It can be a little tricky to get unemployment insurance benefits, but if you are properly classified as an employee, you are entitled to them. So those benefits are up to $450 a week for up to 26 weeks. And then there are various extensions that have been added for COVID-19. You may have heard about some supplements to that amount. Unfortunately, those have since expired. If we could go to the next slide, please. The next benefit to be aware of is pandemic unemployment assistance. This was created in response to COVID-19 to try to cover more workers that are not qualified for unemployment insurance. So it covers independent contractors, folks that are self-employed, and people that maybe fall into some exception for unemployment insurance, as long as they're unemployed because of some COVID-19 related reason. So again, this is unfortunately not available for workers that don't have work authorization. And it also expires at the end of this year. So if you think, again, if you may qualify for unemployment insurance, that does not expire. That is a program all the time. So best to get on that program as opposed to PUA. Next slide, please. So I also want to talk about some of the benefits that are available if you do get sick and are unable to work. All the time, California provides that all employees are entitled to paid sick days. Employers can cap those paid sick days at 3 days. But some cities have more paid sick leave available, like the city of LA provides up to 6 paid sick days. It's important to know that these are the rights of all employees of California, regardless of your status. And in order to take those paid sick leaves, you just request it from your employer. And those paid sick days can be used for the prevention and diagnosis of your illness or treating your illness, or even a family member's illness. Next slide, please. So I know what everybody's thinking is that 3 days really isn't enough if you do get sick with COVID-19 or if a family member does. In recognition of that, there have been many laws passed recently. It's kind of a patchwork, and there's many exceptions. Some cover some employers, some cover others. I don't have a ton of time to get into all of the nuances of that. But just so that folks have a broad overview, these laws all provide up to 80 hours of paid time off. So your employer, if they're covered by one of these, then they have to provide that paid time off under law. If you have COVID-19 and are unable to work, or if you need to quarantine. And just to give you an idea, some of the laws, like the federal law, which covers smaller employers with under 500 employees, and also some of the local paid sick leave laws, like in the LA County unincorporated areas and the city of Los Angeles, They cover even when you need sick time to take care of a family member who has COVID-19, or if you also have your childcare is closed because of COVID-19 and you can't work. So that's a really good resource. And to find out more about which law applies to you, again, it's good to contact an attorney. I'll give you that information a little later on how you can contact us. Next slide, please. So to get that paid sick leave, the COVID-19 related paid sick leave, you request it from your employer, including the information I listed there. The dates you need the leave, the reason you need the leave, and why you're not able to work because of a COVID-19 related reason. We always suggest that you request it in writing. Some of the laws require that. And I'll also note that under all of these paid sick leave laws, retaliation for requesting that paid sick leave from your employer is illegal. And each law has a provision stating that if your employer takes action against you for asserting your rights, that is illegal retaliation. Next slide, please. So one last benefit I want to touch on for folks that are sick and unable to work is state disability insurance. So this is a state program that provides up to 70% of your wages for up to 62 weeks. And you apply through the Employment Development Department, just like unemployment insurance and PUA. So this is available for people that are disabled and unable to work. So if you have COVID-19, are required to quarantine, or even if you have a pre-existing high-risk condition that makes it so that you can't work. You do need to provide medical certification to qualify, and you need to have paid into the program. But as Daniel said, this is available regardless of your status and available whether or not you have work authorization. Next slide, please. And then the last situation I wanted to talk a little more about is if folks have a sick family member they need to care for. The state of California does have paid family leave. Again, like disability insurance, it's up to 60 or 70% of your income. This is only for 8 weeks. It's available regardless of your immigration status, and you apply through the Employment Development Department. And importantly, with paid family leave and disability insurance, this is available even if you are unemployed when your leave begins or when your disability begins. As long as you were looking for work at the time that you needed to take the leave, then you still qualify. And then, as I said earlier, some of the paid sick leave laws, the California paid sick leave, the federal paid sick leave law, they also cover folks that need to take time off to care for a family member. Next slide, please. So this is our information on our Workers' Rights Clinic. We hold it weekly. We want to be as available as possible to the community. We provide legal advice to everyone that needs it. Any resident of LA County is eligible to call. Your immigration status does not matter. So if you would like a consult, please call us. The number is there on the bottom of the screen. Call us and leave a voicemail, and we'll get you signed up for an appointment. Thank you so much. That's all for me.
Thank you, Kelsey. It is really incredible how much information you have, and I learned several things through your presentation. If we can impose on you to have access to that PowerPoint, I think some of the bullet points are very beneficial to our clients. Perhaps we can post it. And I'll ask the same question for all speakers. Perla, your presentation was terrific. Same thing with Jeff and Dan's. Maybe we can put them someplace where they will be accessible. Just a reminder to our viewers that this information, as was mentioned, it's available in different languages, and certainly not to self-disqualify. My takeaway from today is that there are all these resources, and we need to encourage workers, employers, their families to seek help rather than try to do it alone. We are here at the county, certainly with all its wraparound resources, that we want to make sure our residents learn about those resources and how to get access to them. This, as George mentioned at the beginning, is being streamlined live on Facebook. If you could please post your questions there. We are out of time, and we will, commit to respond to each of those questions. And the last thing is, if there's one takeaway, is that there is a phone number you can call our Office of Immigrant Affairs at 800-593-8222. We will provide you with any of the information presented today and more, and then connect you to the right place for you to get the help you need. Again, thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you to our technical team, George, for getting us through this webinar. And most importantly, thank you, our viewers, certainly those who help workers and their families. We want to make sure that we're here to work with you and try to add value to the incredible work you're doing. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. This ends this webinar.